Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Govea. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, the theme, the big subject matter of the show is special. We've got a lot of special things to talk about, including a special counsel. We've got special immunity, and we have a special body camera video from Paul Pelosi. Well, we don't actually have the video, but we have a description of the video that apparently shows that he opened the door. So our first segment, of course, is going to be about the big news involving Donald Trump. He has announced he's running for president again. And so the DOJ said, now there's a conflict of interest. Now this is time for us to do our investigation. And so they're coming in hot. You can see that special counsel, we're going to have that problem because we spent a lot of time talking about a special master. Now we've got a special counsel. Merrick Garland was out. He came out, gave a big 7-minute or so press conference. We're going to talk through it, and we're going to learn a lot more about this guy. This guy's in charge. So, sort of rewind the clock. Think about Robert Mueller. Remember, we listened to him for about 2 years, that name, Robert Mueller, okay? Same thing is going to happen with this guy, Jack Smith. So we're going to learn a lot about him. They're going to hang this special master over Donald Trump for the next 24 months or so until he runs for president. So we've got to talk about it. We have 2 inquiries that are taking place. Mike Pence is actually defending Donald Trump. Actually, on all accounts, which is amazing. And then we've got Liz Cheney, who is saying that Donald Trump will never be president if she has anything to do with it. So we'll talk all about that in the first segment. Before we get to the second segment, where we check back in on this Mohammad Bin Salman saga involving the death of Jamal Khashoggi. You remember this story. It happened a long time ago, and there was going to be some repercussions for the Saudis for executing, murdering, dismembering, a really horrific story, a Washington Post journalist named Jamal Khashoggi. Well, Biden got into office. He said he was going to bring the ruckus towards the Saudis, and obviously that never happened. And so today they actually granted Mohammed bin Salman total immunity, even though the United States government has confirmed, at least through our CIA, that MBS was the person who ordered the death of Jamal. So we're going to go through that. We've got to read through the original complaint, learn a little bit more, refresh our recollection on who Jamal Khashoggi is, because the complaint it's gruesome. This is a gruesome one. So we'll go through this, and it's heartbreaking. We'll also check in with his fiance, or his widowed fiance, or whatever that version is. Fianceo, I don't know what it is. I don't mean to make light of it. She was going to get married to him, and now he's dead, so she responded to the whole saga. Very, very sad story. But that's all in the second segment. Before we wrap up with our third segment, talking about Paul Pelosi and the mysterious opening of the door. We have, for a long time here, been trying to rack our heads around who opened the door, because we heard from San Francisco and the police officers who were actually there on the scene that Paul opened the door for the police. But then when the FBI came and when they showed up there and they took over and they said, hey, we're from the feds, it's our jurisdiction now. They wrote their affidavit, or actually their complaint and their indictment, and they said that the police opened the door. And so we have a big question about the magical door. And so we're going to talk about it because NBC actually did an investigation on this thing, and they've got some good answers for us. And so we'll check in on this. They actually watched the body cameras. We haven't seen it, but they did. And they told us, it is very interesting. We've got several documents that are hitting the docket. In this case, of course, David Depape is the guy who got charged with several different crimes. We'll take a look at the federal indictment, also the federal complaint, because these are two sort of very similar documents. But the newest document is this discovery protective order saying that the defendant himself, David Depape, sort of is not allowed to take discovery and give it out, right? So they're really trying to be limiting what you can share as a criminal defendant. So we've got some documents to go through, and there's going to be a lot of fun ahead. And so if you want to be a part of the show, my friends, the best place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. I think I'm looking at some muffins in the locals chat, and those look pretty dang delicious. We can see, yeah, it looks pretty dang good. Are those Yeah, from Miss Lucky in the house. Woo! Oh, those are chocolate chip cookies. Ooh, those look really good. All right, so you can see what's going on over there. Paul Mino, Howard's in the house. Ray K, OK, Bonnie Speck's in the house. Shout out to Miss Lucky and Sergeant Bob. The whole crew is over there chatting away, and boy, those cookies look good. So come check us out at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. I'm salivating. I have to look away. Put the blinders on. All right, so we've got a lot to attend to, and let's get this puppy queued up so we can just jump right into the program. Special counsel now being appointed to go investigate Donald Trump. And it's going to be focused on two issues that we're going to slowly unpack here today. We've got two big branches that the federal government wants to investigate. One is Mar-a-Lago and this transferring of the documents, and the other is the insurrection, right? The protest, the J6 events that they say was nearly the end of democracy. And so this special counsel is going to be really focused in those two areas, in those two branches, and we're going to go through the entire press release that came out from Merrick Garland. He spent about 7 minutes or so, and we're going to go through the whole thing and listen to this because we are going to be inundated with this for the foreseeable future. If you remember, the last time there was a special counsel appointed to investigate Donald Trump, that was Robert Mueller. We heard about the Mueller report, the Mueller report, the Mueller report, the Mueller report, like a broken record every day from people like, Jar Scarborough and MSNBC. They were all just salivating day after day after day because Trump was going to get indicted, any minute now. And so just brace yourselves because that's going to be the same saga, but this guy is going to be the new name. It's going to be the Smith report. Who is Jack Smith? Smith report. Okay. Here he is. We're going to learn more about him from a clip that I had. And actually, we're going to go to the website. Let's go to the website so we can actually see a little bit more about him. Yes, so this is over from the Kosovo Specialist Chambers and Specialist Prosecutor's Office. A little bit more about him. He's responsible for prosecuting special crimes in special special crimes. You can see this. He's got a very special outfit, in fact, that is appropriate for this type of work. The specialist prosecutor, he's a U.S. prosecutor, high-level political investigations. He was appointed May 2018, succeeded somebody else who was in prior office. Between 2010 and 2015, he served as the first assistant U.S. attorney, served as the chief of the public integrity section for the U.S. DOJ, right? 5 years doing that. We've got 2 years, 2008 to 2010. He worked as a prosecutor in the International Criminal Court. Joined the ICC, was working previously at the U.S. Attorney's Office. He prosecuted over 100 criminal prosecutors, so a very senior prosecutor. He became a U.S. Assistant Attorney, 5 years as a district attorney. And so this guy is a lifetime prosecutor, right? He's a born and bred prosecutor. And oh, great, look at this. He went to Harvard, too. Oh, great. Harvard Law School. Oh, gosh. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So he is also, special prosecutor, reappointed. He's going to be reshifting his focus now to be focusing solely on Donald Trump. And of course, that is going to be fun. So my mind map discombobulated me here. But we're going to take a look at more about his role. We've got, of course, the special counsel announcement from Merrick Garland. But first, let's talk about some gold, my friends. Our friends over at Goldco. As you know, if you've got an IRA, a 401k, or a savings account, things are scary out there. The Biden administration has printed more money in the past 2 years than in the previous 100 years combined. The national debt is at a record $30 trillion. Inflation is the highest we've seen since 1982. It's only a matter of time until the house of cards comes crashing down. If you have a retirement savings, your money could be at serious risk. I'd invite you to talk to my friends over at Goldco to see how you can protect your retirement, your gold with gold and silver before it's too late. It's very simple. You see the web address on your screen. Go to robertlikesgold.com. They'll give you $10,000 or more in free silver when you open up a qualifying account. That's at robertlikesgold.com. Goldco, they've got a A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Good friends of the show, and thank you for supporting their work. Okay, so now we can listen to what Merrick Garland has to say because this was the press briefing. It's under 8 minutes. Let's go through it in its entirety. And let's take a look at the characters who are on the scene. You see Merrick Garland's right there front and center. And then we've got Lisa Monaco, who, as we've talked about a lot here on this channel, sort of speculate that she is really the person who's running a lot of the show at the DOJ. So they bring the whole crew out to announce this big revealing news that they're appointing a special counsel who's going to be investigating Donald Trump.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Merrick.
I'm here today to announce the appointment of a special counsel in connection with two ongoing criminal investigations that have received significant public attention.
Yeah.
The first, as described in court filings in the District of Columbia, is the investigation into whether any person or entity unlawfully interfered with the transfer of power following the 2020 presidential election or the certification of the Electoral College vote held on or about January 6, 2021.
All right. So issue number one, it's like if you're charging somebody with two different crimes, right, you might be charged with assault and criminal damage, right? You wrecked something in a physical property, and then there's also an assault, two charges. Two types of investigations here. One for the insurrection. Got it.
The second is the ongoing investigation involving classified documents and other presidential records, as well as the possible obstruction of that investigation,
Library books,
referenced and
Mar-a-Lago.
described in court filings in a pending matter in the Southern District of Florida. I'm joined today by Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco,
Right there.
U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia Matthew Graves, and Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division Kenneth Polite. Assistant Attorney General for National Security Matthew Olson could not be here. He is currently in Germany representing the department at the G7 Home Affairs and Security Ministerial.
Nobody cares where
U.S.
these
Attorney
people are.
Graves has been ably leading the investigations into the events leading up to and on January 6. He and dozens of assistant U.S. attorneys and other prosecutors have taken on the monumental task of conducting over 900 prosecutions in defense of our democratic institutions. Criminal Division prosecutors, under the able leadership of Assistant Attorney General Polite, have played a significant role in those prosecutions.
Okay, you heard him just say 900 criminal prosecutions. 900. 900. Now, for those of you not familiar with the number of criminal prosecutions that take place in a regular city, in a regular month, that's like nothing. Okay, city prosecutors can handle that case volume like nothing. It's not even a problem. And huge portions of those 900, yes, there were some of them that were violent, but there were the majority of them, at least the ones that we saw. We did an analysis on this, 37 times here on this channel. We've beaten this horse to death. But it is completely insane that they get, they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars and 2 years on 900 cases, okay? You have the Super Bowl come through your residence, or your neighborhood, your city. You have any big event, there's going to be 900 additional criminal charges in any decently sized city that is is out there doing DUI task force. For example, you'll have in many cities 400 or 500 DUIs that you see over the holiday season, okay? And that's just like in one location. This is the entire U.S. Department of Justice, the entire FBI, and they are beating themselves to death over 900 cases, the vast majority of which are nothing more, literally, than criminal trespass charges, criminal damage charges, and disorderly conduct. The same stuff you'll see in any Old Town location anywhere in this country.
Assistant Attorney General Olson has been ably leading the team responsible for investigating the matter involving classified documents and other presidential records, as well as the possible obstruction of that investigation. All of the career prosecutors assigned to these matters are conducting their work in the best traditions of the Department of Justice. I also want to recognize the efforts.
What are those traditions?
Efforts of the many FBI agents and other law enforcement personnel who are assigned to these matters. They are working courageously and steadfastly and are serving our nation honorably. I am grateful to them. We all are. The Department of Justice has long recognized that in certain extraordinary cases, it is in the public interest to appoint a special prosecutor to independently manage an investigation and prosecution. Based on recent developments,
like if you have a conflict of interest, right? Like if you are going to be investigating your political enemy, as it applies here to Donald Trump, right? Now it's appropriate suddenly to appoint special counsel because evidently he declared, right? We were playing this chicken or the egg game for a long time here on this channel. Who goes first? Donald Trump went first. Some people were speculating that maybe he goes first to try to avoid an indictment or to delay an indictment because it creates a necessary conflict of interest. The DOJ has to respond. What is their only response? It's to appoint a special master, right? Because now there's clearly a conflict of interest. They can't hide around it. Previously, their defense had been, oh, Donald Trump, he's just a private citizen. We can go raid his residence. We can go get his, confidential materials, rummage through, get his passport, see whatever personal notes he had, violate in what in my opinion is a clear violation of his executive privilege, attorney-client privilege. Even the judge in the Mar-a-Lago case, she said specifically that there was a big enough problem with how the DOJ was processing the evidence that a special master, Raymond Dearie, needed to be appointed. But none of that mattered to Merrick Garland, okay? All of this conflict stuff, it was irrelevant because they don't think that way. They just think that everything that they do is perfect and ethical and by the books, even though, as we've seen, there's all sorts of disgusting actors in and out of the DOJ and the FBI. The Senate, the House of Representatives, they've got many, many whistleblowers who've beaten the drum in their houses confirming the same thing. So now Garland wants to appoint this special master. The one argument is that this actually hurts Trump, right? Because Trump is now going to be facing a very long inquisition. But the other defense of this is that he had no ability to actually not announce, because an indictment now before he announces would make his ability to announce impossible. So there's a big strategic reason why this might be happening now. But the point is, finally, they're appointing one, something that should have been appointed a long time ago. They're not appointing one, you'll recall, for Hunter Biden, of course.
Developments, including the former president's announcement that he is a candidate for president in the next election, and the sitting president's stated intention to be a candidate as well, I have concluded that it is in the public interest to appoint a special counsel.
Wow, got it. Ding,
Such
ding,
an
ding.
appointment underscores the department's commitment to both independence and accountability in particularly sensitive matters. It also allows prosecutors and agents to continue their work expeditiously and to make decisions indisputably guided only by the facts and the law.
Yeah, sure.
The special counsel will conduct parts of the first investigation I just mentioned. The investigation into whether any person or entity unlawfully interfered with the transfer of power following the 2020 presidential election, or with the certification of the Electoral College vote held on or about January 6. This does not include prosecutions that are currently pending in the District of Columbia, or future investigations and prosecutions of individuals for offenses committed while they were physically present on the Capitol grounds on January 6.
Okay, so he's excluding all of that. So this would be an investigation into everybody sort of leading up to January 6th. And so let's use a Kamala Harris Venn diagram. You have some people who are like leading up to the planning. They're all encompassed by the special master's jurisdiction, right? We're trying to define the hula hoop of who's in and who's out. Merrick Garland just said, well, some of these people are in, some of these people are out. But you might have some people who are physically present, who are there, who just got caught up in the moment, but maybe they were involved in the planning and maybe Trump was, communicating with them or wherever their little bizarre pinboard with all of their, images and all the yarn everywhere, whatever it looks like in their minds, they're trying to define the scope of what this special counsel can get into.
Those investigations and prosecutions will remain under the authority of the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia.
Right. Those are just the regular
The
criminal
special
prosecutions.
counsel will also conduct the investigation involving classified documents and other presidential records, as well as the possible obstruction of that investigation. Today, I signed an order appointing Jack Smith to serve as special counsel. The order authorizes him to continue the ongoing investigation into both of the matters that I have just described and to prosecute any federal crimes that may arise from those investigations. Mr. Smith is a veteran career prosecutor. He began his prosecutorial career in 1994 as an assistant district attorney with the New York County DA's office. In 1999, he became an assistant U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of New York, where over the course of 9 years, he prosecuted matters ranging from gang murders of police officers to civil rights violations. From 2008 to 2010, he served with the International Criminal Court, where he supervised war crimes investigations.
All right, let's talk about that for a quick moment. Let's do a little bit of a quick detour on this because we do have to familiarize ourselves with the Hague. Now, this is where he spent some time. So, of course, we're talking about Jack Smith, this gentleman here. We'll come back to Merrick Garland, but let's pause on that because this is an interesting little detour for us. He spent significant time here at The Hague. And if you're not familiar with this, this is actually, it refers to a couple things. It's in the Netherlands, it's a city, municipality, but it's also sort of a reference to a governing area, right? It's the seat of the government. It's the official capital of the Netherlands. While it's Amsterdam, the official capital, this is sort of the de facto capital, right? The Hague is also a province. It's also the area that hosts the International Criminal Court, the Justice Court, and so on. Population, 500,000. You can see sort of some more details on this, but this is where you get some more details. The Hague is known as the home of international law and arbitration. The International Court of Justice is the main judicial arm of the United Nations. Oh, the main judicial arm of the United Nations. So sort of how we have like the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. We have the International Court of Justice. It's kind of the judicial arm for the UN. It's located in this city, as are the International Criminal Court, the Permanent Court of Arbitration, the Organization of Prohibition on Chemical Weapons, and so on. Approximately 200 other international government organizations are there, right? So it's like this big international, global court extravaganza. I mean, everybody's in there just having a field day. It's just court all over the place for the whole world. And they're, UN people, international criminal court stuff, and so on. And so Merrick Garland is, telling us about some of that. Let's go back in and see where he picks up.
2010, Mr. Smith returned to the Justice Department to serve as chief of the Public Integrity Section, where he led a team of more than 30 prosecutors who handled public corruption and election crimes cases across the United States. In 2015, he agreed to serve as the first assistant U.S. attorney for the Middle District of Tennessee, later becoming the acting United States attorney.
Now, he's not there. You notice, you sort of expect him to be there. Like, where is this guy? Why is he not standing right next to them? Evidently, he was in a bike accident or something, and he's on his way back. So, he just got a phone call or something, but everybody else was there, not him.
Most recently, Mr. Smith served as a chief prosecutor for the Special Court in The Hague, charged with investigating and adjudicating war crimes in Kosovo. Mr. Smith will begin his work as special counsel immediately and will be returning to the United States from The Hague. Throughout his career, Jack Smith...
So they made this announcement very quickly. They didn't even wait for him to get back, right? He says, I'll take it over the phone. They said, perfect. We'll be out there tomorrow morning, and they did it.
Has built a reputation as an impartial and determined prosecutor who leads teams with energy and focus to follow the facts wherever they lead. As special counsel, he will exercise independent prosecutorial judgment to decide whether charges should be brought. Although the special counsel will not be subject to the day-to-day supervision of any official of the department, he must comply with the regulations, procedures, and policies of the department. I will ensure.
And there's a reason for this, right? The special counsel, you want to give them some autonomy. You want to create sort of this arm's length distance so that it doesn't appear to be a conflict of interest. Okay, Biden's running for office again. Trump's officially running for office now. And they don't want to have Biden officially prosecuting Trump, right? If everybody's official now, we've got to create some division there. So they say, okay, well, Biden's not officially prosecuting him now. It's this other guy, Jack Smith, who used to work at the UN. So he's going to be the one who's prosecuting Trump, and he is allowed to do things sort of as a free agent. He doesn't have to be under my direction all of the time, kind of like an independent contractor, so to speak. But he still has to operate within the purview of the DOJ. He can't just go, act like a January 6th committee and do whatever the heck he wants.
That the special counsel receives the resources to conduct this work quickly and completely. Given the work to date and Mr. Smith's prosecutorial experience, I am confident that this appointment will not slow the completion of these investigations. The men and women who are pursuing these investigations are conducting themselves in accordance with the highest standards of professionalism.
Why do they keep leaking to the Washington Post then and the New York Times?
I could not be prouder of them. I strongly believe that the normal processes of this department can handle all investigations with integrity. And I also believe that appointing a special counsel at this time is the right thing to do. The extraordinary circumstances presented here demand it. Mr. Smith is the right choice to complete these matters in an even-handed and urgent manner. Thank you all.
Mr. Attorney General, will you pledge to release any written report?
Will you pledge to release any written report is the question. And he walks on out of there. No questions taken from Merrick Garland. So what can we conclude? Well, we may not see an indictment very soon after all. Why would they rush this along when they can just let it linger and linger and linger as long as possible? We'll see the details about what the scope and what the order includes and what the official jurisdiction looks like. But this new special counsel is going to be able to take his sweet time and just make it hurt. Just squeeze it every day, every week, every month. You're going to see Scarborough and you're going to see all the weirdos on MSNBC day after day. Oh my gosh, what's Jack Smith doing? Did you see Jack Smith? Jack Smith was in and out of court again. It's going to be the same thing. Are they going to do songs again? Are they going to sing Mueller songs again? Oh gosh, it's going to be a big disaster. But that's part of the strategy. Right now, they've got a full 2 years. They can just milk this cow for as long as possible. And you better believe they'll do it. Now, at the end of this, right, there really is some exposure on this story. I've said for a long time, I think Donald Trump does get indicted. I think that this is sort of the end game for them. They want it to happen. They have been, in my opinion, creating environments to make it happen. It's been part of like the end game. Why are they doing all of it? Why are they training for the Super Bowl if they're not intending to play in the Super Bowl? You know, they're doing all of this, they're getting all the gear and all this. Like, that's what they want. That's the entire purpose of this entire, basically, Department of Justice. That's what January 6th Inquisition was for. All of the Mar-a-Lago stuff, all of the independent inquiries and investigations and prosecutions taking place in New York and Georgia and everywhere, right? It's to take him off the field. And this is just another evolution in that saga. So we'll continue to follow it. Now, as we heard from the Attorney General, there are two big areas that they are focusing on, and we'll dive into both of those. But I forgot to mention a little bit more about the role of Jack Smith. So Politico gave us some more details on who this guy is and what his role will be. He's a former chief of the DOJ Public Integrity Section, right? So he sort of goes after, essentially public figures, people who are getting bribes, people who are, doing bad things behind the scenes, violating their public oaths. He goes after them. He's overseeing criminal matters related to Donald Trump. Taking a new role, he's going to operate largely independent of DOJ control. The announcement is a new phase into this investigation. And so Merrick Garland came out and gave a statement. But the special counsel's purview is going to include DOJ and the probe of the Mar-a-Lago library books, as well as the alleged insurrection. He said that I'm going to ensure he gets all of these important things, but he did not say with specificity on Friday why he was appointing a special prosecutor or why he had decided this week. He kind of did. He said it was because Trump announced. I mean, I think we could glean what that was. He said that many career prosecutors are expected to continue staffing. The announcement came just hours after he signed a formal order tapping Smith. Smith's a 1994 Harvard Law grad, led the department's public integrity unit for 5 years before taking on a different position. He oversaw prosecutions of CIA officer Jeffrey Sterling. He was convicted in 2015 of disclosing national defense information. Okay, this is where the exposure to Trump comes in, because he is being investigated under simple possession statutes, right? Like possession of NDI, possession of defense information. That's it. And it's like one of these things. Show me the man, I'll show you the crime. You can find a crime for anything. And if he did sort of acknowledge and admit, yeah, I declassified this stuff. If he says, yes, I had it, but I declassified it, that's still possession of those materials. And that's where the exposure comes in. And so like this guy's got a specific prior prosecution of a former CIA officer. So you can see how that might be analogized over to Trump. And probably why they're so excited about this guy. They're like, oh, perfect. Two potential crimes are at the center of the Trump document probe, or involve both of those things, right? And they got Jeffrey Sterling on that previously. Smith also saw former convictions of Governor Bob McDonnell, Representative Rick Renzi from Arizona. Shout out Arizona corruption. Going to have a lot more of that. Both for bribery and extortion charges. Oh, yeah, it's going to be a disaster here, too. But we see that one of his convictions was overturned by the Supreme Court, so he lost that one. So he's been prosecuting war crimes for a long period of time. 3 new grand juries, wow, were impaneled on Friday, likely linked to the start of Smith's investigation. So this guy impaneled 3 grand juries this Friday. Woo! So this one's going to heat up. Now, under Justice Department procedure, special counsels are required to inform senior DOJ officials about major investigative steps like indictments. And so Garland remains the ability to reject those charges, but then he'd have to notify Congress about that. So according to the order, Smith's going to take over the entirety of the probe, and he's going to take over the investigation of the efforts to interfere with the lawful transfer of power. Okay, so basically, this is what this guy looks like. There are 2 investigations that the DOJ is, sort of pursuing right now. They've got like these case files, right? Think of it like a big case file. Okay, you take this big manila folder full of all this Trump juicy meatballs, and you just give it over to this guy. And he's got a lot of experience, and he's going to run with it. Now, the U.S. attorney is going to retain a control over the, insurrection cases and so on, but he's going to get started. It sounds like today. He's already, right there getting after it. So he's got these 2 inquiries, right? These 2 areas of investigation. The Mar-a-Lago books, the library books that were overdue that are probably going to end up at his library anyways, and the J6 insurrection. And so let's peek into both of these stories. You may have seen this one over the weekend. Turns out Donald Trump's alleged classified documents weren't the nuclear codes, weren't anything that we were ultra concerned about after all. Washington Post reported this in exclusively. They said investigators see ego, not money, as Trump's motive on the classified papers. Oh, so he just wanted like letters and things? He just wanted to keep things that were like memorabilia? A review by agents and prosecutors found no discernible business interest in the Mar-a-Lago documents, people familiar with the matter said. Well, that's weird. We just heard from Merrick Garland that his prosecutors only speak through their filings and that they are very professional and very full of integrity. Why are they leaking to the Washington Post as recently as November 14th? Don't know. But let's carry on. Federal agents and prosecutors are telling the Washington Post that they believe that Trump's motive for allegedly taking and keeping the documents that were classified was largely his ego and a desire to hold on to the materials as trophies or mementos. Oh, you're kidding me. According to people familiar with the matter. I thought that they were the nuclear codes. I thought that these were like Kim Jong-il's, top secret bunkers or something. As part of the investigations, the very trustworthy Department of Justice that operates with the utmost integrity, that never leaks anything, leaked to the Washington Post, they said, that federal authorities reviewed the classified documents that were recovered from Trump's Mar-a-Lago home and private club. They were looking to see if the types of information contained in them contained any type of pattern or similarities, according to these people, who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss an ongoing investigation. Yeah, because they're at the DOJ. They're not supposed to talk about this stuff. But they are, because they're unethical. That review has not found any apparent business advantage to the types of classified information in Trump's possession. You're kidding. These people said. One more time. The government prosecutor's review has not found any apparent business advantage to the types of classified information in Trump's possession. FBI interviews with witnesses so far said that they also do not point to any nefarious effort by Trump to leverage, sell, or use the government secrets. Shocking. Wow. You're kidding. Like these are letters or things, right? Like magazine clippings. Not government secrets that are going to invoke the nuclear Armageddon that Biden's so concerned about. Instead, the former president seemed motivated by a more basic desire not to give up what he believed was his property, is what these people said. Yeah, they're his library books. They're going to go to his presidential library anyways. And he says that they are presidential records or personal records, not presidential records. They're declassified, not classified. And there's prior precedent that supports him on this, including involving Bill Clinton. Several Trump advisors said that each time he was asked to give the documents or materials back, his stance hardened and he gravitated toward lawyers and others who indulged his beliefs. He said, I'm not giving them back. It's a matter of principle. The people familiar with the matter caution that the investigation is ongoing, that no final determinations have been made, and that it's possible that additional information could emerge that could change the understanding of Trump's motivations. Yeah, suddenly it's going to be like, oh, yeah, they like, put the two magazines together and the cutouts match and you see the letters through the cutouts and it says the secret GPS coordinates of the podium or something. It's like, oh gosh, we figured it out. Trump really was going to take over the country. But the evidence they collected over a period of time indicates that the primary explanation for potentially criminal conduct was Trump's ego and intransigence. Yeah, that's it. So why are you raiding his residence? You psycho people, because you're political hacks. That's why. You just want to go take out your political enemies. It's not about justice. You guys knew this from the day one. You know what the library books that were taken were. He checked them out. And you made a big claim that all this was necessary. National emergency, national urgency. We're all going to die. And of course, this story, did you see when this story got published? Isn't this convenient? Look at this story. November 14th. Oh, yeah. Did we have something important last week? Yeah, it was called the elections. So suddenly, in the days after the election, oh, yeah, Trump, it's not the end of the world. It's not a nuclear silo secret code. It's just like, some old baseball cards. Here, it's revealed. But in the days leading up to the election, it was, we're going to die, we're going to die, we're going to die. The biggest monster, the biggest thief, the biggest intellectual classified harvester since Edward Snowden. It was insane. But that's the Washington Post. That's our corrupt garbage media. Now, what's interesting about this is we're starting to see some developments from Mike Pence, who is very much, trying to sell some books out there, but he's also jumping hard into Team Trump. I have not quite seen this type of defense ever from him. Mike Pence defends Donald Trump on basically everything, ranging from the raid on his personal residence in Mar-a-Lago to the so-called insurrection. He's asking, can we just move on from this, please?
Do you think the president committed a criminal act in fomenting the insurrection?
Fomenting.
You think a crime was committed?
Well, I don't know if it is criminal to listen to bad advice from lawyers. Truth is, what the president was repeating is what he was hearing from that gaggle of attorneys around him. And, presidents, just as like all of us that have served in public life, you have to rely on your team. You have to rely on the credibility of the people around you. And so as time goes on, I hope we can move beyond this, beyond that prospect. And this is really a time when our country ought to be healing. And frankly, the Justice Department's actions have been exposed from during our administration, where FBI agents were advancing political agendas, falsifying records, using what came to be found out to be opposition research paid for by the Clinton campaign and the Democratic Party, the so-called dossier. And then this past summer, when we see the Justice Department execute a search warrant against the personal residence of a former president of the United States, I think the American people, I think the American people join me in hoping we can move past this contention.
But is he above the law? I mean, if he violated the law, should he be held to the same standard that I would be held to?
Chuck, no one's above the law. But I would hope the Justice Department would give careful consideration before they take any additional steps in this matter.
That's a pretty hard defense there from old Mikey Poo, isn't it? Woo. Yeah, he's saying, hey, hold on a minute now. Yeah, this insurrection thing, okay, this whole challenging the counting of the votes, that's the same argument that we have been making here since January 6th, okay, many of you have been on this saga since that day. We're going, look, all right, look, maybe it's not the best advice. Okay, maybe, if you take a look at the Electoral Count Act, right? We read through congressional research. We read through Congress's own research entity, their interpretation of why the Electoral Count Act was problematic. We read through the whole thing, and that came out well before 2020 ever occurred, right? They're talking about reforming the Electoral Count Act because it is questionable, and Trump had lawyers that had an alternative interpretation of how it worked. And we read it here, and we're like, well, I don't see that. I didn't see that because it sort of came to what I thought was an absurd conclusion. And we went through that here. The videos are still up here. And that's the exact argument, right? That has been, I think, valid. But nobody has been making it on Donald Trump's behalf for the entirety of this time. And all of a sudden, Mike Pence is now making that argument. It's not bad. It's not illegal to listen to bad lawyers. Where the heck did this come from? What's going on here? And he's also defending Trump and Mar-a-Lago. Just move on. I hope the DOJ doesn't indict him. Just move on from this whole thing. What? I mean, it's the right answer. Yeah, it is the right answer, actually. And it's kind of surprising because everybody else is jumping on the dog pile to go after Trump. Everybody abandoned ship after the midterms. And Mike Pence is sort of, he's kind of saying, hang on a minute, hopefully we can move on past this thing. Woo, that's very interesting developments, huh? Yeah, so we'll have to see what Mike Pence continues to do. Now, you may remember that previously Mike Pence actually responded in another interview. He's got a lot of books to sell, so he's hitting the airwaves. And he was talking to somebody. We covered it on the show yesterday. We played the clip of him where he said, I'm not showing up in front of that garbage, useless January 6th Select Committee. They are illegally constituted. And he said it's insane that one committee or one party appoints every single person who's on the committee. We played that clip yesterday. He had an excellent point then. I'm going, where is this guy coming from? Where has Mike Pence been for the last 2 years? But he's here, and for whatever reason, right, his arguments are being made that are good arguments, regardless of what you think of the guy. The arguments are separate than the individual, and his arguments are good, and it's nice to hear somebody else say it out there for once, for crying out loud. So he said yesterday that the J6 committee, supposed to have 13 members on it, didn't, and that all 13 were appointed by the Democrats, or actually all, how many are on there now? I can't even remember. Doesn't matter. No Republicans that the Republicans wanted on the committee are on the committee. I think it's 9 people who are on there now. 7 Democrats and 2 Republicans, 2 of whom were appointed by the Democrats. Okay, so you get the gist of this thing. So now let's take a look. The January 6th Select Committee has responded to Mike Pence. Mike Pence says, I'm not showing up to your stupid, illegally constituted, non-representative committee. And the January 6th committee responded. They said, all right. They said, okay, Mr. Mike. They said the Select Committee has proceeded respectfully and responsibly. Sort of sounds like peacefully and patriotically there. They're sort of ripping that one off. But okay, the Select Committee has proceeded respectfully and responsibly in our engagement with Vice President Pence. So it is disappointing that he was misrepresenting the nature of our investigation while giving interviews to promote his new book. Oh, they are digging on him for the book hustle. Come on, guys. Liz Cheney, you're going to be doing this too. Okay, you're going to have your book. It's going to come out. It's going to be called like Persevere or something. Liz Cheney riding on horseback. Persevere for democracy. It's going to be dumb, but she'll do it. She'll be, grifting her book all over the place too, but she's going to dump on Pence for it. All right. She says, our investigation has presented the testimony of more than 50 Republican witnesses, okay, without cross-examination or adversarial proceedings at all, including senior members of the Trump White House, like Cassidy Hutchinson, who made up the clavicle attack, the campaign and the Justice Department, right? All sort of fake, artificially selected witnesses that don't get any cross-examination at all, which means their testimony is not challengeable. The testimony subject to the criminal penalties for lying to Congress. Okay, well, has any of them been prosecuted for lying to you? Because the clavicle story was completely disputed by Tony Ornato, who evidently was actually in the car. Did you prosecute Cassidy Hutchinson, or is she still applying for that gig at MSNBC? The testimony subject to the criminal penalties was not partisan. It was truthful because, it was all honest. Okay. Every member of the Select Committee supported the creation of the independent bipartisan commission. So do you see what she's saying here? All of us on the committee, okay, every member of the select committee supported the creation of a bipartisan commission. So it's like we okay, so I see what she's saying. Okay, so there's a difference between a committee and a commission. And she's saying that we supported a bigger commission, but we didn't get that because Leader McCarthy withdrew his support and it was defeated by the Republicans. Okay, they wanted a bigger commission. So they say McCarthy had the opportunity. This is the most ridiculous thing. McCarthy had the opportunity to nominate 5 members, right? We talked about this. The actual resolution, H.R. 503, says 13 people. This is called the House of Representatives, which means it has to be representative. 13 members, the bill that authorizes the formation of the committee. 13 members, 5 Republicans, 8 Democrats. It has 9 people on there currently, 7 Democrats, 2 Republicans who were not appointed by the Republican Party. Kinzinger is going to be gone. Cheney just got blown out by 40 points in Wyoming. McCarthy had the opportunity, she writes, to nominate 5 members. Okay. Speaker Pelosi initially accepted 3 of those nominees. Oh, well, that's great. Are there 3 Republicans on the committee? No, there's not. There's 2. And they invited McCarthy to propose 2 others. Rather than doing so, McCarthy refused to participate so that he could make the false claim that the committee was one-sided. So Nancy Pelosi then said, I'm also not going to appoint the 3 that you gave us, right? The Republicans appointed nobody. Kinzinger and Cheney were appointed by Pelosi. The select committee, they say, has consistently praised former vice president's refusal to bow to Trump, but his recent statements are not accurate. So they're going to war on this, saying Mike Pence, that book salesman, is out there being dishonest about the things that we are trying to accomplish here. Meanwhile, Mike Pence defends Donald Trump. So that's on Mar-a-Lago. Now, the insurrectionary part of this analysis, of course, is also being challenged because Donald Trump is not responding to the January 6th Select Committee's subpoenas. And we covered this previously. Donald Trump and his team, they filed a lawsuit to challenge the subpoena. But this is what the January 6th Select Committee said on November 14th. They wrote, former President Donald Trump has refused to comply with our subpoena requiring him to appear for a deposition. They say his attorneys have made no attempt to negotiate an appearance, and his lawsuit, which we covered here in depth, parades out many of the same arguments that this court has rejected repeatedly, or that these courts have rejected. They say Donald Trump orchestrated a scheme to overturn the presidential election and is obligated to provide answers. And so our committee, Liz Cheney, is going to evaluate the next steps in litigation regarding the former president's non-compliance. Dun, 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 Liz Cheney. Okay, so the committee is going to be doing something. Now, they're going to be out of power, in about January soon, so very, very soon. But Liz Cheney has a new mission in life. She's got a new purpose. Every day she wakes up full of energy. She's got some coffee, and she takes a look at the newspaper and her schedule to go figure out how she's going to bash Donald Trump. It's her whole sole purpose for existing. This is Liz Cheney at a global women's summit who is talking about Donald Trump and how much she hates him and that he's never going to be president ever again.
The January 6th committee has laid out very clearly his direct and personal involvement in every aspect of the plan to overturn the last election. He's, someone who, knowing that the mob was armed, sent them to march on the Capitol to try to stop the count of electoral votes. And then while that bloody battle was underway at the Capitol,
bloody battle for 4
despite
hours.
Everyone around him pleading with him to tell the mob to stop and go home, he wouldn't do it. He sat and watched it on television. So there's no question that he's unfit for office, and I feel confident that he will never be president again.
That's what she says. So she's very excited about that. She's going to be working her whole life to make that happen, and we'll see. He has announced, and the DOJ, of course, is turning up the volume, increasing the pressure and we'll see if the indictment comes. I do think that it will. It's probably going to take quite some time. They are going to try to drag this thing out as long as humanly possible. Of course, we will continue to cover it. Thank you for subscribing and liking this video wherever it is you're watching it, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends, so we're going to change gears a little bit and talk about this gruesome story, man. This is a pretty gnarly one. We've got a heavy document to read through involving Mohammed Bin Salman and Jamal Khashoggi. Biden and the State Department grant immunity to Mohammed Bin Salman, the man the American CIA says is responsible for killing Jamal Khashoggi. He was murdered some time ago, and the White House, the Biden White House in particular, has said that Khashoggi is going to be brought to justice. He's going to be held, the people who murdered him are going to be held to justice, that he is going to be avenged, that there will be justice for his death. And so we're going to go through this in detail. We've got the actual complaint that was filed by Khashoggi's wife that details the horrific scene, the day of his death. We've got reaction or prior clips from the Biden administration that articulate what their prior position was. We're going to take a look at the U.S. recommendation, because now they're granting immunity to the individual who was responsible for the murder, and we'll see what his fiance had to say about it. But let's grab some background on Jamal Khashoggi in case you're not familiar with the story. This happened some time ago, and you can see the photograph here from Jamal Khashoggi. This is the gentleman, photograph taken in 2018. And Wikipedia tells us that he was a dissident author. He was somebody who worked for the Washington Post, and he was assassinated when he went to the Saudi consulate back in 2018. Agents of allegedly the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman were responsible for it. And they say that MBS, right, he's this very sort of powerful prince over there, is responsible for making the order. So individuals are obviously upset about this. Khashoggi fled Saudi Arabia in 2017, went into exile, went and started writing out against the administration for all sorts of human rights abuses, got Person of the Year in December for defending journalism, and he's been, deemed to be called the guardian of truth, right? And so this guy was assassinated, according to the American CIA. And what's very interesting here is that the Biden administration said that when they were getting into power, right, this is a Washington Post columnist, right? This is sort of somebody, when this happened, the entire media came crashing in, sort of around this and said, we have to demand justice finally. No more dealing with the Saudis. Stop this oil transaction. Stop selling a military deal, or stop interfacing with them. It's time to decouple. So we'll see what the Biden people had to say about it. But let's take a look at the actual complaint that was filed by his widow, because this is a pretty horrific thing that happened. And you can see this is the case of Hatis Cengiz and Democracy for the Arab World Now versus Mohammed bin Salman, right? This is the individual who is in the palace in Saudi Arabia, as you can see. Now they're asking for a jury trial. This is a 61-page document. It was filed back in 2020, October 2020, so just over 2 years ago. And it's naming a whole slew of different defendants. Everybody's sort of listed in here, all sorts of Saudi officials being responsible for the death of Khashoggi. So here's the complaint. We'll take a look at the highlights here before we take a look at what the Biden administration did. They say here that the plaintiffs, her name is Hatis Cengiz, she's the widow. She seeks judgment against the defendant, which is MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, for the murder of Khashoggi. On October 2, 2018, the Saudis, MBS, acting in conspiracy and with premeditation, they kidnapped, they bound, they drugged, they tortured, and they assassinated a U.S. resident and journalist, right? He's a U.S. resident, and he was working for the Washington Post. He was a democracy advocate. He arrived inside the Saudi consulate inside Istanbul, Turkey, and then he was dismembered. His wife, Cengiz, or his widow, she waited outside for him for more than 12 hours while it happened. His body and remains were never located nor returned. This brutal and brazen crime was the culmination of weeks of planning and conspiratorial actions taken by the Saudis. The ruthless torture and murder shocked the conscience of people throughout the world. The objective was clear. They wanted to stop him from speaking out and for democratic reform to stop that movement. The murder was carried out pursuant to the directive of Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. The Saudis saw Mr. Khashoggi's action in the United States as an existential threat to their financial interests, and they committed this crime. The plan to permanently silence him by murdering him was put in motion no later than the summer of 2018, after MBS and other defendants and their co-conspirators discovered Khashoggi's plan to utilize Dawn as a platform to promote human rights. The defendants learned that after hacking his telephone, that he had created and headed Dawn, and they were very concerned about this, that it was going to bring all sorts of scrutiny on their administration. When Khashoggi approached the Saudi embassy in Washington, D.C. to acquire documents to confirm his civil marriage, defendants manufactured the opportunity to murder him. Okay? He approached the Saudi embassy in Washington, D.C. to acquire documents. Specifically, as part of the conspiracy to kill him, the Saudi embassy officials informed Khashoggi that the documents were not available at the embassy in Washington. So this guy comes to Washington. I need to get married. How do I do that? They say, oh, bummer. You're going to have to go to the consulate in Turkey. You can't do that here. If you want to get married, you've got to go back overseas and go get that done in Turkey. Okay. Thus, while Mr. Khashoggi was in the United States, members of the Saudi embassy, who were also in the United States, lured him to Turkey under a ruse that was the sole place he could get the documents. The fatal misdirection took place in the United States. It was part of an overall conspiracy intended to have a direct impact on his political activities. Defendants and their co-conspirators organized and orchestrated the murdering of this scheme, and so therefore they are suing him for damages. Okay, so this is a private individual, the widow. They were married at the time of his murder. They were seeking to civilly confirm it. So they were actually married. They were trying to get the government to recognize it. He went into the consult. The wife waited outside. She never saw him again. Mohammed bin Salman, he's the defendant. He ordered the murder of Mr. Khashoggi. Numerous individuals directly involved in the torture and murder of Khashoggi were part of his inner circle. MBS is neither the head of the Saudi state nor the head of its government, right? He's a prince. Rather, he is the son of King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud. And King Salman is the head of the state of the kingdom. And because he serves as the prime minister of Saudi Arabia, he is also head of the government. They name a bunch of other defendants, okay? Tons of other people. We're not going to go through all of them. But they're going to come up with some additional claims. They're going to say, you murdered this guy. And they give us a bunch of additional details, okay? But it's a pretty horrific scene. The guy goes in. He wants to confirm that he's married. They execute him, they dismember him, and his wife is waiting outside. So the wife files this complaint, and they want all these additional damages, punitive damages, compensatory damages. The lawyers sign off on this out of New York, all filed out of the court. And so you say to yourself, okay, well, that's great. Shoot, if your husband, if your spouse, if your significant other, something like this happened to them, you sort of kind of want the government to sort of say, can we do something about this? Can we file a claim? Can we make this right in any way, shape, or form? So they do that, right? They file this lawsuit. They're in the United States District Court out of the District of Columbia. They're in DC. So my gosh, hopefully they're going to get some remedy. Let's see what happens. As we go forward, we take a look and see what Joe Biden had said previously about this situation. Now that we know what the complaint looks like, this was from a debate where Joe Biden was arguing with Donald Trump and moderators about dealing with the Saudis and how to handle the Khashoggi murder.
The government is responsible for executing nonviolent offenders and for torture. President Trump has not punished senior Saudi leaders. Would you?
Yes.
You would.
And I said it at the time.
Okay,
Khashoggi was in fact murdered and dismembered, and I believe in the order of the Crown Prince. And I would make it very clear.
On the order of the Crown Prince. On the order of the Crown Prince. Oh, MBS did it. Oh.
Clear. We were not going to, in fact, sell more weapons to them. We were going to, in fact, make them pay the price and make them, in fact, the pariah that they are. There's very little social redeeming value in the present government in Saudi Arabia. Wow. And I would also, as pointed out, I would end the subsidies that we have, end the sale of material to the Saudis, who they're going in and murdering children and they're murdering innocent people. And so they have to be held accountable.
Okay. Biden says we're going to hold them accountable. They did murder him, and they did dismember his body. They're murdering kids over there. There's all sorts of human rights abuses that need to be addressed. Now, when Joe Biden said that, it didn't sort of fit well with this old fist bump that we all saw some time ago. The fist bump heard around the world when Joe Biden just walks up and gives the old little, hey, bro, what's going on here? After the big laundry list of complaints that he had towards the Saudis. We just see the old fist bump. Boom. How are you? How are you? How are you? Everything I said, forget about that. Love you guys. Good to see you. What's up, bro? So that's what was going on out of the new administration. Talk a big game in order to get all the lefty liberals at the Washington Post to write good stories about you. He's going to avenge one of us. Okay. And I do think that there should be repercussions for that. I don't like the idea that people who are on Team America, whether residents or citizens, are being dealt with other governments. You know, I don't like the Russians doing what they're doing to Brittany Griner. I don't like Saudis doing what they did to Khashoggi. I don't like any, America will discipline our own, okay? We'll deal with our citizens ourselves. You don't get to discipline Brittany Griner. That's our responsibility. Same type of thing here. Khashoggi was just a totally innocent person. He just goes over there, and the United States is being asked to help this woman get some recourse. And Joe Biden said that he was going to do it. So what happened? Let's see what the State Department had to say. State Department writes a letter making a very interesting suggestion. Exhibit A from the State Department being filed in federal court. It's a letter over to the Department of Justice from the Principal Assistant Attorney General. They're communicating about the complaint that we just read. Cengiz versus MBS Mohammad Bin Salman. This letter comes November 17th out of Washington, D.C. It's a 2-page document from the United States Department of State, a political body which is run by Joe Biden. The same guy who just said they're going to hold MBS accountable. Let's see what it says. Dear Mr. Boynton, in the above referenced case, we have the judge who's presiding, Judge John D. Bates, has requested that the U.S. government file a statement of interest regarding any issue in this case, but in particular about whether this doctrine, called the Act of State Doctrine, applies, and the applicability of head of state immunity in this case, including whether the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia might have interests that are implicated without them participating. They say that the court granted the government's second request for additional time, setting a deadline of November 17th. They said, we really need some more time to think this one through. She files a lawsuit against MBS. The district court judge, John Bates, he's like, I'd love to help you, lady. I'm excited to help you on this. Let me check with the U.S. government and see what they have to say about this. Because, you're suing the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. Like, they might have something to say over there at the State Department. Let us know. Okay, State Department, do you want to say anything on this before I issue a ruling? Because I'm about to tell this lady she gets $400 billion from the Saudis. You want to chime in? They say, we need more time once. Oh, we need more time again. And now we need more time again. And they're setting a deadline for November 17th. Guess what date this letter is? November 17th. Talk about government deadlines, huh? All right. They continue. They say the State Department recognizes, this is the Biden State Department, recognizes and allows the immunity of Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman as a sitting head of government of a foreign state. There it is. Granted immunity to MBS from Joe Biden under common law principles of immunity articulated by the executive branch in the exercise of its constitutional authority over foreign affairs and informed by customary international law. If you listen to that, you'll know I said nothing right there, essentially. Nothing specific anyways. This is big general legal fluff language. Under the common law, principles of immunity articulated by the executive branch in the exercise of its constitutional authority over foreign affairs. There's nothing in there. But it sounds good. And also informed by customary international law. What customs? What international law? Where, what specifically? They say Prime Minister bin Salman, as a head of government, is immune while in office from the jurisdiction of the United States District Court in this suit. So is he actually in office? Like, is he going to be unelected anytime soon? Is he going to be not in office anytime soon as the prince? Isn't that kind of like a lifetime thing? So I guess he's immune forever. In making this immunity determination, the Department of Justice takes no view on the merits of the present suit. And we reiterate our unequivocal condemnation of this heinous murder of Jamal Khashoggi. In the same letter that they're saying, you can't prosecute the guy who murdered him. We reiterate our unequivocal condemnation of this heinous murder of Jamal Khashoggi, but we're granting the murderer complete and total immunity forever. Accordingly, the Department of State requests that the Department of Justice submit a suggestion of immunity to the district court. Sincerely, Richard C. Visek, acting legal advisor. Man, I'm sure he did not want to sign this letter. He's like, are you serious? I have to sign it? Can Jake Sullivan sign it, please? No, God, no. No. He's like, no, get that out of my office. I'm not signing that. He says, send that over to Ned. Give it to Ned. He's the spokesperson. Ned's like, I'm not signing that crap either. Get that out of here. They go down to like third tier Richard, poor Richard. Poor Richard's got to sign this. They're like, oh, here you go, Richard. Sign this document. You're signing it. So, okay. So that is from the U.S. State Department, a political body, right? They don't tell us how they classify him as immune from this. They say, well, it's just customary international law, and it's also something that is pursuant to our constitutional authority over foreign affairs. Okay, well, there's all sorts of constitutional provisions that you can reference that give you direct power. I mean, we've got a lot of this stuff is articulated in the law. Would you like to reference any of it? No? Okay. So that's great. They send that letter. They draft it over as Exhibit A. That comes from the State Department. It goes over to the U.S. Department of Justice. These prosecutors then, they've got to go tell this poor lady, you're not getting any stinking recourse. Sorry. Prosecutors, or let's say civil lawyers for the U.S. government, respond to Khashoggi's widow, Hatis, and they tell her, guess what? We're suggesting immunity for Mohammad Bin Salman, the guy who murdered your husband. Sorry. 6-page document out of the D.C. Circuit Court. Here is what the government writes. They say, all right, Judge, on July 1st, the court, you entered an order inviting us, the U.S. at the State Department, to submit a statement of interest about any issue in this case involving Saudi Arabia and MBS, whether he's immune or not. They say that the Constitution assigns to the president the responsibility to represent the nation in its foreign relations, and they give us some constitutional provisions that do that. Here, they say the executive branch, after considering the relevant principles of customary international law and in the implementation of its foreign policies, they've determined that MBS possesses immunity from the suit while he holds that office. And they say that this determination is controlling and it's not subject to judicial review. So they're saying, sorry, Judge, he's immune whether you like it or not. You don't get to make a choice on this. They say the U.S. government has expressed grave concerns about Jamal Khashoggi's horrific killing and has raised these concerns publicly with the most senior levels of the Saudi government. It's also imposed financial sanctions and visa restrictions after the killing, and it's sought to promote transparency as well as get more information out to the public through an intelligence community assessment. However, the doctrine of head of state immunity is well established in customary international law, and it's been consistently longstanding, and we've been honoring it in the executive branch for a long time. And so pursuant to these principles, the Department of State has informed the DOJ that the State Department recognizes the immunity of MBS. Man, that's not what Biden said they were going to do. Under common law principles of immunity articulated by the executive branch. Here they put that line again that means nothing. Under common law principles of immunity that's articulated in our minds, MBS, as a sitting head of government, is immune. In making this determination, the Department of State takes no view on the merits of the suit and reiterates its unequivocal condemnation. Now, for many years, they say that the executive branch exclusively determined the immunity. And so they say the court, you don't have any ability to change our position on this. And they bring in some Supreme Court case law as well. They tell us that the doctrine of head of state immunity is well-established customs in international law. Oh, we get some sources here, which is good. They turn us over to this guide on diplomatic practice When was this written? In 1979. Yeah, okay, so somebody named Sato has a guide to diplomatic practice. So they just went on like a Google or some search engine, and they just said, what diplomatic practice? How to shake hands when you go visit a murderer. Oh, this looks good. It says don't charge other people with crimes. Perfect. So they just go and they get some literal books, like they're referencing books. Somebody's Guide to Diplomatic Practice. They have the Schooner. Okay, we've got a case here. We've got another case here. We've got 2 cases in a book, which is good. The executive branch accepts the principle of international law, and we grant him immunity because he's the foreign head of state. Therefore, he is entitled to this immunity. The court has no jurisdiction over this suit over him while he holds that office. Signed by U.S. lawyers James Powers out of the Civil Division, Washington, D.C., counsel for the United States government. So absolutely, nothing they can do about this now. Sounds like the court is just going to, okay, Mohammed bin Salman, you are off this case, right? The other people who are, I guess, incidentally related to him or also immune. I would guess that immunity probably extends to his deputies and things. We'll see what the judge decides, but okay, so nothing there. Nice job there, United States government. Nice job there, President Biden, and your promises that you were going to have some sort of recourse. How does that land on the individual who lost her husband? How does she feel about this? She said, oh, yeah, Jamal died again today. That's what Hetis Sengiz posted on Twitter. Jamal died again today. Yeah, so not that good. Doesn't feel all of that good. Here's what else she said. She said Biden saved the murderer by granting immunity, and her case is being thrown out. He saved the criminal and got involved in the crime himself. Let's see who will save you in the hereafter, POTUS. Khashoggi's widow blaming President Biden for letting the murderer go free. Whew. Some heavy stuff there. So prayers to her family and to everybody involved in that, as our government just, billions of dollars, trillions of dollars, and, oil and all of that stuff, right? Don't say you're going to do something and then not do it. Don't say it. People were skewering Trump over it, but he didn't say that he was going to go after them, did he? All right, so that's enough of that. We've got that segment. Lastly, we've got to talk about Paul Pelosi before we wrap it up here on the day, because this one is spicy as well. Paul Pelosi opened the door. That's according to new reports from the news. We're going to dive into that. The big question, did Paul Pelosi open the door? I mean, if he opened the door when the police showed up, why didn't he go outside the door? Why didn't he say, I'm being attacked. There's a psychopath in there with a hammer. Help me. He didn't do that. Other people say that's not true at all. It's the police who opened the door. That's why Paul Pelosi didn't run out. But we had no idea what the truth was because we haven't seen much of the evidence. But evidently, NBC has, and we are, of course, going to take a look at that report. But I want to show you the evidence that is being submitted in federal court. This is the docket that is against David Depape, the guy who got charged with crimes. And as a quick primer on this, there are 2 different levels of charges that are taking place right now: state court crimes and federal court crimes. Immediately after this happened, David Depape was arrested by San Francisco police, and he was incarcerated and charged with several state crimes. Shortly thereafter, the FBI, which we'll look at later, showed up and said, we're basically in charge, and they charged him with additional crimes, referencing the federal statutes, not the state charges. Here was the original complaint. So this is the docket on the federal docket filed out of the Northern District of California, the Federal District Court, United States versus David Depape. Here you see that on October 31st, immediately after the crime, there was a criminal complaint that was filed. We're going to read that. But where new information came out is back on November 9th. The federal government, the FBI agents, they filed an indictment. And this is where we get a little bit more meat on the bone. So we're going to look at that. We also have, just to sort of get us caught up to speed, if we scroll down to the bottom, we're going to see we had some recent orders as recently as November 17th, which is about discovery and protective orders. But let's catch up on the docket. So 2 things happen. The crime starts in October. They immediately file a criminal complaint. Soon after, they convene a grand jury. The grand jury gets together. Evidence is presented. They lead to an indictment. We're going to read through that one. They had a petition for a writ of habeas corpus, and this is because he had state charges. They needed permission from the court, or basically notice to the court, to transfer him while he's in state custody for the state charges, to bring him back over to the federal level for federal charges. Okay, that's what this whole section is. So the government says, all right, judge, he's being prosecuted separately. We need him for our case. Do we have permission to get him? The judge says, yes, here you do. You do have permission to go get him. They reset this case for an initial appearance, which means he showed up, pled not guilty. That took place on November 15th, just a couple days ago. And that was not public. We couldn't see anything that happened there. Look at what happened that day. Order of recusal came in. So the judge who was originally assigned on that case, the guy's name was Judge Charles Breyer, he recused himself from the case. He's no longer on the case. Why might that be? Well, I actually opened up the order of recusal prior to the show. Nothing interesting in there. It's a standard order. He doesn't give any explanation for the recusal. If I had to guess, it's because he probably knows Pelosi. He probably is close with the Pelosi family. He's a judge there in California. So he recuses himself from the case. The case then gets reassigned to another judge. Her name is Jacqueline Scott Corley. Judge Breyer is no longer assigned to the case. He gets booted off. So they have new hearings set. We had an appearance that took place, it looks like, or the docket was updated after the appearance that took place on the 15th. We have Mr. Dapape, who files a financial affidavit. Okay, he can't afford private counsel, so he applies for a public defender. The public defender is presumably approved. Then there's a stipulation and a proposed order, and then an order on the stipulation. Okay, so we're going to take a look at that as well. This is called a protective order. It's saying David Depape is not authorized to disclose any discovery outside of this criminal case. So we've got several things we're going to look at. This protective order. We're also going to look at the 2 criminal filings, both the complaint and the indictment for David Depape, all being prosecuted, of course, by the federal government. And so if you remember, we saw the FBI show up previously, and I wanted to go back and listen to this one more time because we have 2 sets of simultaneous investigations that are sort of parallel on top of each other. This was the scene when the FBI showed up at David Depape's residence, or where he was apparently living, and we can see the rainbow flag. We can see that the FBI asks for permission from the residents before they go in. But this was the day after, right? The San Francisco Police Department have already conducted their investigation and basically already written their report, and body cameras. All of that has already happened. Then we see these 4 FBI agents show up, and I suspect that one of the women here is the Stephanie Miner, who is the special agent who actually drafted the complaint and the indictment that we're going to take a look at. But here was the scene outside of David Depape's residence.
No, I mean, yeah, so what did you guys want to talk about?
Move over to the side. We don't care about anything else, but let's just come over here and talk in private.
Daniel, that guy's there.
Okay, so if you can't hear in your earbuds or your headphones or TV screen, the guy walks in and you can hear on the audio, he says, hey, the FBI's here. Kevin, the FBI's here, or somebody's name. Let's listen.
Talk in private.
Daniel, that guy's there.
Daniel, FBI's here.
That guy's there.
FBI, dummy, get off the video game. Get out here. FBI's here.
I mean, you surprised? I mean, there's a bazillion news reporters knocking on our door. Fucking Jesus Christ. Yeah. So, I mean, they want to come talk to us.
They want to come talk to us. FBI's waiting outside.
On there, you can just be able to pull the thing.
This right here?
Yeah.
They say, come on in. FBI agents are opening the gate. So one of these people, I believe, is Stephanie Miner, who is actually writing the criminal complaint and the indictment.
While I secure the gate here.
FBI agent says, excuse me while I secure the gate.
There's no one else inside, just me and him. Well, we have a couple puppies, but that's about it.
So this is a media person who she just comes in. This FBI agent turns around back to the woman, to the media person, says, "Can we help you? Why are you here? We're the FBI. We got permission to come on this property. What are you doing just walking in?" This poor lady thinks that they're just members of the media. She thinks, they're journalists because they look like journalists. They look like they just got off, done working out that morning or something. And so she comes to join them.
Well, we have a couple puppies, but that's about it.
Death stare.
Well, apparently the news reporter has knocked on our door and said that. What?
Are you not reporters?
No, just go away, reporters.
Reporters, go away.
Go away.
This is the FBI.
Yeah, go
For
away.
real?
Yeah, no
Oh,
joke.
sorry.
That's the FBI. Oh, sorry. She doesn't even know they're FBI agents. A highly trained journalist can't even tell they're FBI agents. And he gave her the little evil eye. Did you see that? I'm an FBI agent. Who the heck do you think you are? Look at that face right there. Oh, giving her the side eye. All right. So now she goes in, right? That's the scene from the FBI. Now we're going to go. We got a lot of questions about this, of course. The NBC investigation is going to detail some of the differences between the FBI report and the San Francisco report, because the FBI, all of those esteemed geniuses who you saw show up there, evidently their report is not accurate. Go figure. So we'll listen to that investigation in a quick minute. But first, we've got to check in with our friends over at 4patriots.com. As you know, my friends, a food shortage could be coming. Experts have been talking about this as recently as July. We've got drought, inflation, we've got new policies. They're bringing our food supply to a breaking point. That's why survival food is more important now than it ever has been. You can create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriot survival food kits today. This is not ordinary food. We're talking about good for 25 years, super survival food, hand-packed right in a family-owned facility in the United States, creating over 200 jobs for Americans. These kits are compact, they're sturdy, they're water-resistant, they stack very easily. They've got different delicious meals, breakfast, lunches, and dinners. You can make them in less than 20 minutes. All you've got to do, add some boiling water, simmer, and serve. And right now, you can go to 4patriots.com and use code Robert to get 10% off your first purchase on anything in the store, including a 3-month survival kit. You'll get their famous fresh guarantee for an entire year after your order, a free shipping on anything over $97. These are called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale goes to charities who support our veterans and their families. You can go to 4patriots.com today. Use code Robert to get 10% off your entire order at 4patriots.com. Use promo code Robert. And thank you for supporting our sponsors. All right. And so let's check in on this investigation. Remember, we've got big questions about who opened the door.
All right.
Did Paul Pelosi open the door, or did the police open the door? We've got a lot of questions about this because it's important. It lends to credibility. Who's telling the truth here?
All right, new information tonight on a story that we've been tracking, the attack on Paul Pelosi, the husband of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Yes.
Our investigative team looked into why state and federal prosecutors each describe one specific detail of the police response differently. Senior investigative reporter Begad Shaban has been checking with his sources to try and clear it up. He joins us now, and you've got some answers, Begad.
Well, Jess, this all has to do with the moments, seconds, really, just before Paul Pelosi was struck in the head with a hammer inside his San Francisco home. Now, there continues to be contradicting accounts of a relatively simple question. Who opened the door that night when San Francisco police arrived to the Pelosi house? Now, the Department of Justice says the 2 officers opened the door. That's according to a federal indictment filed earlier this week. But the San Francisco District Attorney's Office, in another court document that was filed earlier this month, said Mr. Pelosi opened the door with his left hand.
Whoa!
So the question is, what really happened? According to a source familiar with the investigation who personally watched the police body camera footage from that night, officers knocked on the door of the Pelosi home, then backed away. And the video clearly shows Paul Pelosi open the door with his left hand, just like what was noted in the documents filed by the DA's office. Now, also as written in the DA docs, The source tells us the body cam video shows officers having a brief conversation with Pelosi and David Depape. That's the man accused of breaking into the Pelosi home, before Depape starts beating Pelosi with a hammer. We reached out to the Department of Justice for an explanation on its differing account of this seemingly innocuous issue of who opened the door, but so far we have not heard back. However, I did get to ask San Francisco DA Brooke Jenkins directly about another issue many people are wondering about earlier this week, based on her office's account of Paul Pelosi opening the door. The case has certainly garnered a fair share of conspiracy theories about what actually happened that night.
It's not a conspiracy theory. It's written in the reports. The San Francisco police said it happened one way, and the feds say it happened a different way. We're not making up differences. It's not a conspiracy theory. People have questions about the difference. What?
Part of your investigation, are you able to shed any light as to why Paul Pelosi didn't run out of the house towards police officers when he was able to actually open the door for them when they arrived?
What I'm not able to do is to speculate or try to place my opinions on why someone acted the way they did in any case. All we have is what happened. Everybody reacts to situations differently, and he will one day need to explain, right, to potentially a jury why he did what he did, and what thought process was going on in his mind. But certainly we know that all victims of crime respond very differently under the stress of the situation, and I don't think it's fair for us to place what we believe, Monday morning quarterbacking.
Oh, we just have general questions. We just have general questions about all this stuff. I mean, the theory is if you have a home invader, if you have a home intruder and you are fearful for your life, if you really are in danger, and the cops show up, and you open the door, you step outside so you're no longer in danger. You don't open the door, say everything's fine, come on in, and invite the cops in if you have a home invader in your house. I mean, just generally speaking. Now, that's why people have questions about this, because it doesn't fit. That's the whole point of the justice system, is to find the stuff that fits and doesn't fit. Now, listen to this lady asking why this might matter.
Yeah, I got to ask you this because, I mean, in the end, does it really even matter whether he opened the door or the guy opened the door or the police opened the door?
It
I mean,
does.
how does that change the scenario if you move away just conspiracy theories?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is right now, Jess, we have no reason to believe that it matters at all. And that's why our source, who has seen the police body camera video,
it does matter, because it might be that the FBI is either one, incompetent, that they didn't watch the body camera video and record it appropriately, right? They didn't do something they should have done. Number two, they did watch it and they were intentionally lying about this, right? They saw something that was a bad fact and they lied about it in their filing. Holy moly.
Can't understand why federal investigators wrote that officers opened the door, because they say the video shows officers didn't. But when two police agencies give slightly different accounts of what happened in this kind of high-profile case like this one, it just feeds into conspiracy theories, and that's what we're seeing.
It's not a conspiracy theory. We're asking about a discrepancy in the police reports, in the official government filings, in documents submitted by FBI special agents and DOJ reviewed lawyers. It's not a question about a conspiracy. It's why is there such a big gap between what San Francisco police, the local cops, say and what the feds say? Now, to be fair to this guy, Be God, I think he's just protecting himself. I got to tell you, this guy did a great job even reporting this. He's probably going to be skewered, and hopefully he's still on the air next week. But obviously he knows why this is important. That's why he spent so much time investigating this. Now, I'm pretty sure he's just playing dumb at this point.
Right now on social media, people inventing crazy stories based on something as simple as who actually opened the door.
Yes, and in a situation, I mean, Brooke Jenkins said it there, in a situation like that, when so many things are happening, it is chaotic for the victim. So
let's take Paul Pelosi out of the whole thing. Forget about Paul Pelosi. Okay, maybe he's just confused. It's in the middle of the night. He doesn't know. Maybe he thinks it's his friend. He doesn't know what the heck's going on. He's on Ambien. He's drunk. Who knows, right? It could have been any one of those things. And that's fine. I'm not even as concerned about that. I'm really concerned about why the FBI lied about it, or why was it intentional? Was it an intentional lie? Did they just not watch the body camera footage, or did they watch it and they reported it differently? So it's like either incompetence or it's malicious attempts to adjust the narrative. This guy actually did a report, dove in there. Yeah, they don't match up. And somebody watched the body camera and the FBI is clearly wrong or they're clearly lying. And this lady, does it matter? Yeah, it matters, because you have a corrupt federal DOJ and FBI investigating and making stuff up that's obviously not even true. All right, so we've got a couple other details on this, including a distinction between what ICE says happened and what the San Francisco police say happened. So we've got some additional problems now. You've got the federal investigation that contradicts the state investigation. We also have now a federal ICE customs enforcement investigation that contradicts San Francisco as well. So none of these federal agencies can get their ducks in a row. Fox News reports that ICE contradicts San Francisco's reason for denying an interview with David Depape. You see him there. We've talked a lot about him. ICE is disputing a claim. Now the San Francisco Sheriff's Office, they say, you can't talk to him. They gave a reason. ICE sources told Fox News earlier this month that San Francisco Sheriff's Office had denied ICE officials the ability to interview David Depape, who DHS confirmed was in fact an illegal immigrant, illegally stayed here, crossed into the United States from Mexico on a visitor visa in 2008. Depape is facing charges of attempted murder, residential burglary, all of those other charges. San Francisco is a number of jurisdictions that has a sanctuary policy that forbids cooperation with ICE. The state of California also had a sanctuary policy for years. San Francisco told Fox News that a person presenting themselves as an immigration official tried to show up and interview Depape. However, they said that person was denied access because they lacked government credentials, instead saying they only presented a business card. Okay, so immigration's customs enforcement, they show up to take a look at this guy. Can we talk to him? San Francisco says, no, you're not official. You're not an official employee. ICE says, that's ridiculous. However, an ICE official told Fox News that the ICE agent, an enforcement and removal operations deportation officer, not only attempted to conduct an interview in person with Depape, but also had government ID. Says the officer identified herself, presented her government-issued credentials bearing her photo, name, position, and organization, but San Francisco denied the DO's request. In response to the statement by ICE, San Francisco said no. The person identifying themselves arrived at our jail with a business card, but no government credentials, and was therefore denied access. So everybody is just, I guess, doing whatever they want over there. You know, nobody has access to anything. ICE is saying San Francisco is doing something. San Francisco is saying ICE is doing something. The DOJ has no idea what's going on at the FBI. It's just a total mess. All of it in California, of course. So finally, let's take a look at some of these indictments so that we can see exactly what is going on here. There was an original complaint that was filed. This is the original criminal complaint filed against David Depape. The date of the arrest was on October 28th. He was held with no bail. Of course, this involved David Wayne Depape out of the San Francisco division, felony charges, several different U.S. counts. This was submitted on 10/31. This is the criminal complaint out of the federal district court for the Northern District of California. All of this was submitted, and you saw this, came from FBI Special Agent Stephanie Miner out of San Francisco. Probably one of those FBI agents that we walked into David Depape's alleged yard. So that's the cover sheet. This is the criminal complaint, and you're going to see just a couple little differences between these two documents. Both of these documents are, an indictment and a criminal complaint. These are two documents that are intended to bring and initiate criminal charges against a person. They go through different mechanisms, but they essentially get to the same conclusion, which is to determine that there's enough probable cause to move forward with the charges. So the criminal complaint came first, then they presented all of the evidence to a grand jury, which brought about the full formal indictment. Two charges here: assault on a federal official family member and attempt to kidnap a federal official. And you saw this came from Stephanie Miner. And I wanted to just zoom in on the door portion of this to see if we could see the door portion of this. She says, I'm a special agent of the FBI. I'm currently assigned. I'm authorized to investigate this. We've got applicable criminal statutes. This is from the first filing in October. It says October 28th, there's a male at home. The male is going to wait for Pelosi's wife. The male said his name is David. Okay. At 2:31 a.m., SFPD officer Colby Wilms responded to the residence, California, and knocked on the door. When the door was opened. Now, you see that? Right there. When the door was opened, Pelosi and Dapape were both holding a hammer with one hand. And when we read through this originally, we're saying, hold on a minute. What kind of stupid report is this? When the door was opened? Like, what is this? It's like it's passive language. Was? Who did the acting? Who did what to whom? It's passive writing. The door was opened. It'd be like, well, Pelosi was struck with a hammer. Okay, we need a lot more information than that here. By whose hammer and who did the swinging and where did it happen? All this other stuff. So in the first filing, the first complaint, we don't get any information about the door being opened. They skip over that. They say that Pelosi greeted the officers. Hello, gentlemen, welcome. The officers asked them what was going on. Dapape responded. He said everything was good. Officers then asked Pelosi and Dapape to drop the hammer. But that's when Dapape pulled the hammer from Pelosi's hand, swung the hammer, struck Pelosi in the head. Officers then immediately went inside now. Okay, so now the officers aren't even inside the door. So the door was opened. We don't know by whom. Then the officers went inside after the swinging of the hammer already struck. While officers were restraining Dapape, Pelosi appeared to be unconscious on the ground. The rest of the story is history, right? We've read through all of that previously. Okay, so that was the complaint. That's the first filing. Then once all of this evidence, right, that's right at October 28th, boom, it happens. FBI shows up the 29th. We fast forward a day or two. They get a complaint drafted, submitted to the court. But then they have a time to really investigate the case. And so they say, okay, we better present all this material to a grand jury to get this guy formally indicted so we don't have to have any more preliminary hearings to establish probable cause through the direct complaint process. Got it. We go back over to the grand jury proceeding. A lot of time has passed. They've got their cases, their ducks in a row now. And let's see what they filed for us. November 9th, 7 pages, same court, filed in the United States District Court for the Northern District of California, United States of America versus David Depape. An indictment presented and signed to the foreperson of the grand jury, submitted November 9th with no bail, approved by the judge for 2 counts. Attempted kidnapping of a federal officer and assault of a federal official. So same charges in the original complaint. Here's what they say. Speaker Pelosi is or was the former Speaker of the House. She's a member who is entitled to Capitol Hill protection. Married to Paul Pelosi. They live in San Francisco. Now, zooming in on the door, on or about October 28th at 2:23 a.m., San Francisco police received a 911 call from Mr. Pelosi at the Pelosi residence. In the 2.5-minute phone call, Pelosi conveyed to the dispatch officer that there was an unknown man in his residence. Pelosi also conveyed that the man was looking for Pelosi's wife. Mr. Pelosi's wife is Speaker, who would not be there for days. Pelosi made clear in the 911 call that he did not know who the man was. On the call and from the background, Dapape can be heard giving his name as David and declaring himself a friend. Mr. Pelosi confirmed to the dispatcher he did not know the man. Towards the end of the call, when the dispatcher offered to stay on the phone with him, Mr. Pelosi told the dispatcher that the man wanted him to get the hell off the phone. Moments later, at approximately 2:31 a.m., SFPD officers from San Francisco responded to the Pelosi residence and 2 officers knocked on the front door. The 2 officers who approached the door had their body-worn cameras activated. Great. The 2 officers opened the door to see the foyer. Wait a minute. What? The 2 officers opened the door to see the foyer. Okay, so that's different because in the prior filing, they told us that the door was opened. The door was open. All right, so we get a little bit more information. Okay, good news. The police then opened the door to see the foyer of the Pelosi residence. And Pelosi was wearing a long sleeve shirt. Dapape was in shorts, running shoes, and a sweatshirt. And they were jointly gripping a hammer. An officer asked what was going on. Dapape says everything's good. used his other hand to encircle Pelosi's right arm. Immediately, an officer said, "Drop the hammer." Depape responded, nope. Depape then pulled the hammer over his head, thereby also pulling Pelosi closer to him. So he like pulls it up. Pelosi's grabbing it, and Pelosi goes, "Whoa." Swung the hammer abruptly and forcefully at Mr. Pelosi. This event lasted 15 seconds. So here we have some similarities. As the officers rushed through the door, they found Mr. Pelosi and Depape on the floor. Pool of blood surrounded around Pelosi's head. They confirmed that he had a backpack and that the backpack was on the porch by the broken glass. Now, see this is similar now. So back to the original filing, we have a difference about how the door was open. But then they hung outside of the foyer. Officers immediately went inside, right? So that is true. They did wait outside in both stories. But in this second indictment, it's unequivocal. The two officers opened the door, right? Now, that is not what NBC News is reporting at all. That is in the indictment. The two officers opened the door. Now, the rest of this we have covered and talked about, but in a subsequent search, they found cloth gloves, a journal. They spoke to officers. Mr. Pelosi spoke to officers. He was transported down for treatment. They had an interview with Mr. Depape. They Mirandized him. He said that he broke into the door using a glass hammer. He found Pelosi in bed, told him to wake up, said, "I'm looking for Pelosi. Where is she?" He had zip ties he said he was going to use to restrain him, and he also threatened Pelosi when he was on the phone. He said he did not leave after the 911 call because he was fighting tyranny, and that he used full force on Pelosi. Said that she is the leader of a pack of lies and that there's other targets, and he had an address of another target, somebody named Target 1 as well. Right, so that's the distinction. Of course, not much additional there, all presented to the grand jury. We've covered, it's much of the same facts we've covered previously. And so signed by the foreperson of a grand jury, submitted and accepted by the courts. And of course, he had some additional hearings as a result of that. So very interesting differences there. And let's just listen to this one more time to see and just confirm exactly what happened here, because it sounds like that's not at all what's true.
Inside his San Francisco home. Now, there continues to be contradicting accounts of a relatively simple question. Who opened the door that night when San Francisco police arrived to the Pelosi house? Now, the Department of Justice says the two officers opened the door. That's according to a federal indictment filed earlier this week.
We just read that.
But the San Francisco District Attorney's Office, in another court document that was filed earlier this month, said Mr. Pelosi opened the door with his left hand.
There it is.
So the question is, what really happened? According to a source familiar with the investigation who personally watched the police body camera footage from that night, officers knocked on the door of the Pelosi home, then backed away. And the video clearly shows Paul Pelosi open the door with his left hand, just like what was noted in the documents filed by the DA's office.
They got it right. The local cops got it right. The feds got it wrong, or they lied about it. Now, we don't know. But there was another interesting filing that we'll wrap up with that includes a protective order for Dapape. And you can see this got filed on November 17th. If we can see it here. Yes, November 16th. 5-page document filed in the Northern District of California. It's a protective order against David Depape, or in the case involving David Depape. They say that David Depape is charged with a number of different crimes, and that as this case progresses, there's going to be materials that pop up in the discovery process. And so recall, discovery in a criminal case, remember that the government has all of the evidence. They've got body cameras, they've got witness interviews. Think of it as like a big file or a big briefcase. They've got everything. And so in the process, when somebody is charged with a crime, we go through what's called discovery or disclosure, where they will send stuff over to us in sort of batches. Well, here's a disclosure batch, here's another one. And in this case, they're trying to protect this individual from any disclosures, as well as protect government information from disclosures. So here's what the court has ordered. Judge said, it is hereby ordered that Depape's counsel, their investigators, their assistants, their employees, everybody on the defense team, they may review with the defendant, Dapape, all of the discovery material produced by the government, but they shall not give Dapape a copy of it or allow him to make copies of it or even have unsupervised access to any of the discovery material produced by the government that contains protected information unless it's been redacted entirely from the discovery materials. They don't want Dapape or his lawyers or anybody on this team to disclose anything, right? They're going to tighten this puppy up. The government and defense counsel are ordered to work together to ensure these materials are protected. So if anything leaks, there's going to be a big problem. But that the defendant has as much access as they can, consistent with our order. Discovery material that clearly pertains to a specific defendant that does not contain protected information may be provided without the redactions. Now it says defense lawyers may show the witness the protected information in the course of preparing for a defense or for trial, but only if the witness, by reason of their participation, would have seen or had reason to know about it, right? So you can't sort of show all witnesses everything. You can only show certain witnesses relevant information. It's going to be highly protected. It's otherwise relevant. The defense basically has to promise they're going to be adhering to all of that. They say defense counsel may also provide unredacted copies of protected information to experts who have been officially retained. The defense team shall maintain protected information safely, securely, shall not divulge anything. If a party files a pleading that contains protected information, must file it under seal. Any judgment or disposition that has become final that also contains protected information will be also kept under seal. And everybody signed off on this. Okay, so this is submitted by the U.S. prosecutors and the assistant federal public defender. Of course, David Depape is going to be getting a public defender. It doesn't seem like he's going to afford private counsel, but that's the filing. So very limited, right? Very protective envelope has been attached to this entire case because they don't want you to know anything about what really happened here. And of course, our big question is, did the FBI intentionally lie about who opened the door, or what, are they just incompetent? Which one is it? Don't know, but it's certainly one of the two, and we'll have to wait and see. We'll continue to follow the Dapape case because there's going to be a lot more fun stuff, I'm sure, on it. In fact, it'll probably be a very quick plea deal. We'll see, but we'll continue to cover it. Thanks for joining us as we do. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like this video wherever it is you are watching this, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. And so we are done with the show for the day. I saw some super chats come in, and so we'll get to those here in a quick minute before we jump over to our locals after party. But we had some heavy stuff we got to today. Special counsel assigned in Donald Trump's cases, 2 areas of inquiry: Mar-a-Lago, the J6 insurrection, which we'll continue to cover. Biden grants Mohammad Bin Salman immunity after he promised he'd be paying for the injustice for the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. Didn't happen. And we also saw that Paul Pelosi evidently opened the door. It's on body camera. But our corrupt FBI either is too stupid to figure out the reality of what exists, or they're intentional liars. Who knows? But we will continue to cover it all and more. Now it is time to hear from you and to see what you have to say about all of this. Of course, I saw some of those very generous super chats come in. So we are queuing up that screen right now to say thank you for all of those. Let's see who we've got in the house. We had one today from Fro Featherstone. Thank you to Fro Featherstone, who says she must feel awful. He was making their marriage legal and died for it. Biden thinks it's okay. Well, the murderers didn't touch Pelosi's lectern. That's true. Yeah. Had they gone into the Capitol building, like if Mohammed bin Salman had like even thought about stepping foot in the Capitol, or like if he came out and endorsed Donald Trump or something, yeah, they probably would have, I don't know, maybe nuked Saudi Arabia. I don't know, invaded for sure. So thank you, Fro, for that very generous dono. But I think otherwise that is what we've got for the program on the day, my friends. We are going to jump over to our watchingthewatchers.locals.com after party. And so if you'd like to come and join us over there, that is the address on the screen. We're going to be there for a little bit after the program here today. Otherwise, my friends, thank you to all of our sponsors who are very supportive of our show. Of course, our law firm is an amazing law firm. We're located in Scottsdale, Arizona, and our mission is to help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope. And so a lot of people are traveling here to Arizona this time of year because it's gorgeous out, and they're out golfing, and they're out having festivities, and they're doing holiday parties and end-of-year annual retreats and stuff like that. And the cops are everywhere, man. They are on these saturation patrols. They are just out there like just ravenous for criminal charges. And so if you happen to know anybody in the state of Arizona who needs help with criminal charges, our law firm is the place to call. 480-787-0394, online at rrlawaz.com, where we just absolutely love to help. We have the best team. We're good at what we do, great at what we do. So please give us a call. Keep those antennas poised. Anybody we can help, we appreciate that. Also, thank you to our sponsors, 4Patriots. Don't forget to get your survival food at 4patriots.com, promo code Robert. Amazing survival food. Don't want to starve to death out there. We've got Goldco also. Check out Robert Likes Gold. Don't let your savings become evaporated through crypto scams or, anything else nefarious out there, including the US dollar. Check out our friends at Goldco at robertlikesgold.com. Otherwise, my friends, thank you to the mods who mod down the fort for us. Big shout outs go to Vienticus Prime for keeping things nice and orderly this week with the help of K-Bean, Just Cause, Lean in the house, along with Playin' Hooky. Shout outs to Ronnie Cole. Zulu's in the chat tonight. Geo is also on YouTube. You can subscribe to him, and our friend Henry. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. We're going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for a little bit more together. Otherwise, I hope you have a tremendous weekend. It was a busy week. We're going to need to rest and relax and recharge our batteries and unplug from politics and spend time with friends and family so that we can come back here on Monday to do it all again, recharged and refreshed and ready to go. And so together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous weekend, my friends. I'll see you right back here on Monday. Bye-bye.